Hello, my name is Audrey Gordon, and I welcome you to the 5th day of the Dataverse Advent Calendar. Today we're going to talk about tables, and we have quite a bit to say, so without further ado, let's jump into a key question. How are tables in Dataverse different from tables in other databases? Even though the definition of table is essentially the same. A table defines information that you want to track in the form of records, which typically include properties such as company name, location, products, email, and phone. And this is a summary of the types of tables I'm going to go through, and I will put the link to that page in docs.microsoft.com in the description for your enjoyment. But I'm going to cover these basics really quickly just to give you the essentials. The key thing about Dataverse in general is it's not just a database because it comes with so much more than just tables. And the tables are so much more than just columns and rows. So let me get started by explaining that Dataverse has 4 different types of tables, starting with the standard table. And this is where it really stands out as different. It comes out of the box. So as soon as you install your Dataverse database, you will get what's called the common data model, which is a core set of tables that have been modeled in such a way that we can call it common, which means we can use it across many applications, across many environments. And this common data model, which includes tables, of course, but also relationships and business rules and different things like that, that drive how these tables are used. And other systems, such as Azure, understand the common data model. So it also reduces the amount of data mapping you may do for integrations. We do recommend that you reuse these core tables if they meet your business scenarios. And I will show you an example of that when we get into the actual demo. Secondly, you have custom tables. And here is kind of typical in most companies. In most databases, you have the ability to create a table, right? So not uncommon. But these tables also have ownership associated with them. So custom tables can be owned by the org, right? Which means that you can permission across the org, or it can be owned by a user or a team. And this opens up your security permission options, right? So that you can optimize who sees the tables to be exactly who needs to see those tables and edit those tables and view those tables, etc. When we get into a brief discussion of security, I will break down all the options for security. But ownership is very closely related to what people have the permission to see or do with these tables. Ownership cannot be changed after a table is saved. So when you create a custom table, you're going to be asked, is this an organization or a user or team table? And if it's one of those two, and you save after you choose and create, you cannot change it after the fact. So again, when we get into the security topics, this might make more sense. Then there is the activity table. This is something I find rather unique to Dataverse, where you're actually tracking activities within the context of the records in Dataverse. And activities, think of them similar to tasks, although not exactly the same thing, but they have a start due date, they have an end date and time. They have a start date and time, an end date and time, and a due date, as well as a duration. So when you think of tracking something, those kind of parameters really do help, right? Also, an activity can be opened, canceled, or completed, right? So this also gives you the ability to know what's being done and what's left to be done, or what activities need follow-up. So very, very useful table type. These show up in timelines in the Dataverse model-driven app, which we talked about before. These are not organization-owned, of course, because it's kind of like the RACI model. You wouldn't make the whole company accountable for something, right? So basically, these are usually owned by a team or a user. And then the last type is virtual tables. And this is major important because now not only do you have Dataverse data in Dataverse that you can model, you also have data from other systems that you need. So it's very rare nowadays to see data in silos, right? People need to work with data in a more composite way, a more aggregate way. And yet they don't want to move their data around for whatever reason. So the best way to handle that challenge is to virtualize data in Dataverse, which means like having a window into that data without having to put the data in Dataverse, which means you have no capacity impacts when you add virtual tables. The newest thing that I love about virtual tables is the new virtual table wizard that literally in 5 clicks helps you to add a SharePoint, a SQL, or an Excel table or list directly into your Dataverse tables so that you can use it in your apps in Dataverse. You can use it in your business logic in Dataverse, etc. Last thing I wanted to just point out is why is there an asterisk up there in custom? It's because in order to create a custom table, you need to have system admin or system customizer security role, right? So one of those two. Again, security role topics will be better understood later, but a system administrator can do just about anything, and a system customizer is usually focused on the schema and the structure of the Dataverse instance. And they're usually doing it for the sake of solutions. All right, so we're going to go look at this up close, and I just want you to pay attention to these little squares that I have circled in red. I had the screen like half full, and so it automatically responsively remaps itself vertically. And I think that's something I forgot to tell you before. Dataverse is completely responsive, so whether you're looking at it on a huge screen, a touch to Surface Hub, or even on your phone, you'll always see it respond to the size of the screen and so forth, so that you can easily read it. But all of this stuff is really makes Dataverse unique because tables are not just columns and rows. They are all these different components which are reusable. When I talk about data modeling, this is your opportunity not only to set up records and columns, but to drive how those records and columns work together, right? Whether that be simply from a relationship aspect to alternative keys, to the simple things like forms and views, or charts and dashboards. So all of these things that you see here on this screen are working together to drive how this table will work when you build solutions against it. So key thing here, you're not building your solutions one app at a time, and each app you're deciding what forms, what views, what business rule. You actually are building logic directly into the data model, directly into the tables, so that every app you build respects that. And I'm just going to give you one example. Let's suppose that your customers, they are in different countries. And so somebody could be filling out a form in Dataverse and select United States as the company. But if your finance department needs to associate United States with a particular code, like maybe United States is code 1010 and Asia is code 2020, we don't have to go and teach everybody about these codes, right? All we have to do is tell the data model that every time somebody picks United States, please go and set this other field called company code accordingly. We don't have to teach this to anybody. Nobody even has to know it exists. But now, because that field has been populated through that business rule or that business policy, now the finance team has what they need to process that invoice. All right. So think about the fact that you can build intelligence into your tables so that every time you build an app, those policies or rules are respected. This is huge. And I want to be honest, I have seen this nowhere else. And I just think it adds such value to Dataverse. So let's go take a look at this up close in Power Apps. What I have done is I've created an environment. I do want to point out, we talked about this in the Dataverse tour, I believe, that you can create your own developer environment just by going to aka.ms developer plan and clicking on existing user and signing in with your company credentials. It will create for you your own private developer plan environment that you can use for practicing what you learn in the 25 days of Dataverse value. You will want to go over to the admin center. From Power Apps, if you just go to this cog up here and click admin center, that'll bring you into the admin center. And from the admin center, just simply click on your environment's name and click the three dots next to the name and click settings. The one thing that you will find very helpful is having some sample data. So in the data management section, there is sample data. If you have any problem finding it, just use the search to type sample data and it will bring you there. Once you get there, I've already added my sample data for the sake of time, but you'll see a button install sample data and you'll click on that and it will tell you thank you, and that'll happen in the back end. Go ahead and continue your day. So then you can close this and within a few minutes your app will have sample data, and that is what I have done in this environment. So when I go into expand Dataverse here and look at the tables, you'll notice that my tables will have some sample data, and that is all I did to get the data in there, just so that you know. All right, it is helpful to add that sample data just so you can see how these things work together and how easy it is to play around with this and kind of learn from how it's structured. This is the table hub for the account table. But if I go back to tables here, you can see that I can see the recommended tables. I've done nothing. This is what I mean by this common data model that's kind of given to you as a gift when you install Dataverse, right? You get it as part of what you're paying for with Dataverse. Maybe I'll say it that way. You have all of these tables. For instance, you have an account table, an appointment table, a contact table. You don't have to go make how many times have I seen people make a custom contact table? And I'm always wondering why, because there's one big built in here, right? All of these exist, and there's actually plenty of them. We kind of hide them all because some of them are for back-end reasons, and some of them have slightly different kind of rules as to how they're used. But the recommended ones are the ones that I suggest you kind of look at and see whether there are any that you think you could reuse. Because if you can reuse it, go ahead. And I'll give you one example of that. So let's go back. So you can notice that I have I have a couple of interfaces for tables. I have the first one that kind of shows me all my table. And I can go in here and decide whether I want to see my custom tables only or everything that's in here, which is a lot. Or I can go in here and I can search for a table if I forget, don't want to browse that long list, and it will show me that table I've searched for. Once I open the table, I'm in the table hub. And the table hub is a really cool place to work because we see everything associated with this table. And this is where I want to stress. Tables in Dataverse are not just columns and rows. They are a whole bunch of things, right? So you can see they have properties. These properties can be edited. They have schema such as columns, relationships, and keys. And this is often used to create alternative keys when you're bringing in data from somewhere else that might need 2 columns as a key. Data experiences, which gives you forms, views, charts, and dashboards. All of these things are reusable across your solutions whenever you connect to the account table, right? So you may be thinking, oh, well, views, I've seen that. In SharePoint, you have a default view when you make a list, and you have a default form when you create the list, and you have a couple of views. Maybe you have an all items view and you might have one other. Okay, no, this is not what I'm talking about. This is similar to what that is. So a view is a view and a form is a form. But look how many views you get out of the box. You already have the idea of my active this, my active that, inactive things. And this is all about being able to activate or inactivate a record. You have these all built in. And each one of them can be cloned and revised. An idea of why you might want to do that. So when I talk about reusing tables, one of the first things I talk about is the account table. Because account is synonymous with company. And it's like any external company that you need to keep a relationship with from a business perspective can be surfaced in this table, such as your customers. And this is what we think about firstly, customer relationship management. The account table is where the customer name is. But we could also use this table for suppliers. They are external companies as well. We could also use this table for partners, especially if they're not in our Active Directory and we want to keep track of our relationship with those partners. We can have that here as well. And there's a really cool column in here called business type. And the business type column, which is built in, like there's so much stuff built in here. I've got to encourage you to check it out. If I go into edit column for business type, you can actually change these types. So let's do a new choice and let's type customer, new choice supplier, new choice partner. Okay, and I can even change these numbers if I don't like these numbers. I can change them whatever I want them to be. And I can move this default value down maybe. And so this is kind of what I want. And for the default choice, I'm going to say customer, because I'm assuming most people who are building new accounts in here will be adding customers, but they have the capability to add other things. So now I'm going to say save. So I've actually customized an existing column. I didn't create anything new, right? I just took the column that's there, and this column has great value because now I can tag different companies as per what they are to me. And then I can use that filter in my views, for instance. I can use it in many ways as I make apps. I might make apps for dealing with suppliers that are different from my apps that are dealing with partners. And therefore, as I use that app, I will have all those filtered things going in there. Now I'm just going to quickly just change the business type of the first company to supplier, right? And now I've tagged it, and I can go through here and tag all my customers, my company names as what they are, supplier, customer, or partner, right? So just kind of do this kind of thing to delineate. So you don't have to have 3 different tables for your suppliers and customers or partners because it's the same type of metadata you're collecting. Why not use just this one table? And then when you talk about the views here, and by the way, the reason why I clicked away to another field is that when you're using this grid down here and you're editing live inside of Dataverse, right here in this editable grid, it's the click away from the field that saves the data. So just kind of remember that. All right, so then I click on views, and now it says my active accounts. I can come in here and edit this, and we'll have a whole day to talk about the beauty of views, right? And I can go over here to this filter area, add a filter here. Now, there's one thing I think I need to remember to do, and I always forget to do it. So in order to use columns in filters and things like that, you also need to make sure that the column is searchable, right? And so let's go. I don't think it is searchable by default, the business type column. Okay, so just make sure you make it searchable. This means it'll be discoverable through a filter, okay? And it will be searchable. So then we'll just press save here, give it another minute. And then I'm going to go into the views here, and I'm going to pick my active account views. And I'm actually going to, in 2 seconds, to create a view for my active suppliers, right? You can probably guess what I'm going to do. I'll give you 20 seconds to think about it. All right. Those of you that said anything close to clone and revise, revise and save, copy and revise, any of that works. Up here, I have, at the top of the view, I have save as. So I will save this as my active suppliers. Now I have a new view. I leveraged all the goodness in Dataverse. I don't have to know all that goodness. I just copy that. And then what I want to be different in this particular view is I want it to be filtered to my suppliers. So once that view comes up with the new name, which it will in a second here, now I can add a filter here that says business type equals supplier. And now, whenever I use this view in an app, it will be filtered down to just the business type of supplier. So you can imagine that I can do apps and target this view when I'm doing apps for suppliers, maybe target a different view when I'm doing apps for partners, and maybe most of our apps are for customers. So really cool stuff. Just kind of remembering that tables are so much more than columns and rows. And we'll have a day to talk about relationships. We'll have a day to talk about business rules. We'll have some time to dig into these things, but suffice it to say, tables are much more than columns and rows, and Dataverse is much more than a database. So I'm going to leave you here for today, and I'll look forward to talking to you tomorrow when we will actually build our own custom table together. So I look forward to day 6 tomorrow of the Dataverse Advent Calendar, and I thank you for coming and listening to day 5 today, which was all about tables. Happy holidays, and see you tomorrow.